Good morning, everyone. My name is Susie Knight, and I am the co-chair of 50/50 Women on Boards Houston, joined today by my fearless partner, Sarah DeJ Willis.
Hello, everyone. Susie and I are honored to once again welcome you to the third annual Houston Conversation on Board Diversity. Thanks for being here. This year, we've redefined the theme with the focus on leading the way to a diverse and gender-balanced board, and are proud to announce that after a successful Global Series kickoff on November 3rd, followed by 29 other city-state conversations, we have the honor of closing out the 2021 Global Series here today in Houston with you.
Well, Sarah, how amazing is that? With Houston serving as the most diverse city in the United States, I cannot imagine a better way to end on a high note. And for those of you who may not be familiar, 50/50 Women on Boards is the leading global and advocacy campaign driving the movement towards accelerating gender balance on corporate boards of directors. But why does this matter? Well, number one, it's good for business. Numerous independent research studies have shown that public corporations with women on their boards outperform their peers. And given all of the emerging challenges we face today, adding women to corporate boards provides a competitive advantage. Number two, it's about career advancement for women and people of color. Historically, corporate boards have been off limits. However, with employees leaving their firms at a faster rate than ever before, now termed the Great Resignation, today's future-focused corporations and their boards are looking for ways to continue to thrive and see the necessity for embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels. And they do this to retain their shareholders' trust, including their investors, their employees, their customers, and the general public, all the while reducing risk and improving the bottom line. And finally, hey, it's just the right thing to do. No excuses.
Thanks, Susie. I couldn't agree more. Today, you'll hear from our VIP panel, followed by an intimate 60-minute director coach breakout session regarding board readiness. These director coaches, all of whom have dedicated their time and their support to this important cause, are here today to provide each of you with a unique opportunity to further develop your roadmap to the boardroom and expand your board-ready network. But before we get to the main event, I'd like to hand things over to Judy Moses, our head of operations, who plans to share a brief update on progress made in board diversity. Welcome, Judy.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Each quarter, 50/50 Women-Owned Boards uses the data provided by our partner Equilar to release its Gender Diversity Index and analyze our progress on gender balance. Let's look now at that progress. Nationally, women now hold 25.6% of Russell 3000 Index company board seats, a 3 percentage point increase since last year and the largest year-on-year increase in the last 5 years. Results for Texas are similar at 23%, also an increase of 3 percentage points and nearly halfway to our goal of 50%. 50/50 Women-Owned Boards also ranks Russell 3000 boards on their degree of gender balance. As of the second quarter of 2021, 7% of Russell 3000 companies have gender balanced boards, while in Texas, this is 5%. We are seeing good progress in more boards with 3+ women and fewer companies with only 1 woman or 0 women, both nationally and in Texas. So we are moving the needle in the right direction. For all companies in Texas to be gender balanced, company boards will need to add between 500 to 1,000 women, depending upon whether a woman replaces a man or a seat is added to the board. And a substantial number of these companies are headquartered right here in Houston. In addition to advocating for gender balance on boards, our mission is to ensure boards are diverse and that women of color hold at least 20% of board seats. Today, of the reported information, only 12% of directors are people of color and 4.5% are women of color. We encourage board directors to self-identify with our partner Equilar to better assess and develop solutions for underrepresented groups. We also encourage companies to be intentional when searching for diverse board candidates. Our continuing advocacy is essential to generating further awareness, education, and collaboration. Back to you, Susie.
Thank you, Judy. It's so great to hear that we're headed in the right direction. And Judy, your support and service has been invaluable to our 50/50 Women on Boards Houston team. So thank you for that. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming today's moderator, our very own Melody Meyer. Melody is known to so many of us in the audience, not only for all of her accomplishments, but also for her unwavering support of 50/50 Women on Boards Houston and for the advancement of all women. After a distinguished 37-year career, Melody retired from Chevron in 2016, where she served as president of Chevron Asia Pacific EMP in her last 5 years there. As Melody moved into phase 2 of her career, she was invited to join not 1, not 2, but 3 public boards, BP, AbbVie, and NOV. Melody, thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and over to you.
Thank you, Susie, and welcome to everyone that's on our call today. As you saw from the data from Judy, we're making good progress, but we have a long way to go. And for those of you that have joined the call, you're taking a really important first step in learning more about how to join a corporate board, how to prepare and run your career so that you can position yourself for board service. These kind of educational opportunities didn't exist years ago, and I really want to commend Women on Board 50/50 and other organizations that are providing opportunities to learn more about how you can prepare for future board service. We need to get those numbers up. So Judy shared some numbers. I'll share just a few more. Our theme is leading the way to diverse and gender balanced boards. And there was a recent Spencer Stuart report that said that ethnic and racial diversity in new director recruitment has had a landmark year, which is good news. Record-breaking 47% of new NED directors are people of color, compared to 22% last year, big change. Progress is mixed for women. We're making good progress, but women represent 30% of S&P 500 directors, the most ever, but new NEDs for women fell slightly from 43 to 43% from 47. But the good news for everyone on this call is that boards are adding more non-CEO directors. 74% of incoming directors come from outside the ranks of CEO, chair, vice chair, president, or COO. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward in our panel. So let me welcome our panel. We have a fantastic panel for you today with tremendous board expertise. Let me quickly introduce them because I want to hear from them. So Catherine Hughes Gould has a distinguished career in oil and gas. She was retired from Nexen in her last assignment in the industry, has served on numerous corporate boards, but she's currently serving on the board of Royal Dutch Shell. Then let me introduce Lee Jordan. Lee has a very distinguished career in Chevron as well. He retired as the Chief Diversity Officer, head of DEI in Chevron, and he's a very recent director. He has recent experience joining his first board on Pros Holdings. And then let me also welcome Suzanne Nemex. Suzanne is a retired senior partner from McKinsey. Many of you probably know her. She has a decade of boardroom experience. He's a current non-executive director on ArcelorMittal, Owens Corning, and Oventive. So welcome to our panelists. We're not going to give you time as an audience to ask Q&A because we're going to hear from them. But in the breakouts, they are all going to be coaches. So welcome to ask them questions in the breakouts. So what we think that is most on your mind in the audience, the questions is how do I get access to boards? What skills do I need? And really, how do boards think about putting together a diverse, gender balanced board? So let's start with access, because each one of you has an experience to share about how you prepared, how you made decisions, how you networked, or how you engaged to get placed on your first public boards. We're going to start with Catherine, and then we're going to go to Lee and then Suzanne. So Catherine.
Thank you very much, Melody, and I'm delighted to be here. And I always had the thought we can change one of you in a way to access to where they want to be, it's success. Now the bar is low, we are hoping for more, but anyhow, I'll start like this. So let me talk about a little bit my approach to board, or how I got there. And before I even start that, you need to know that you're going to hear a lot about networking and things that you need to do. Every one of you have a different way to get there. I'm not a networker. I've never been, and I will never be a networker. And it's okay. You have other ways to get in the board. So don't feel like you are in a bad place because you're not a networker. What has worked for me, and I need to say that, is to be prepared. And what I mean by that is, as you are an executive, you are going to enter in executive roles, or you are already in executive roles. What matters is how you present yourself. And one of the best things that was ever done to me, I had a mentor that looked at my resume and how I present myself and just killed me. He said, no, 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 no. And then I'll present myself, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. So what it means is you have to really think, and you have to have somebody that helps you thinking that being executive is very different than being a board member. The roles are different, what you need to do is different, and how you present yourself is different. Who cares if you grow your revenue by 40%? Nobody cares at that point when you join the board. What they want to know really is what you stand for, what is your expertise generally, and how are you going to fit in their board? So those are different things that I've learned. So I've learned to be prepared. You need to be actually going through a thought process. And really yourself as who you are and how do you define yourself. And I have an advice about this. I mean, you need to end up with 3 things at the end of your thought process. One is a resume that attracts attention. So who you are, 3 competency areas you have, and 3 of the strengths you have, really. So what attract attention? A resume. And then you need to have criteria of decision of what you are going to go to. And I think it's important for a couple of reasons. You need to assess what basically your values are, and how your values are going to match the values that the company you want or is going to propose itself to you. So this is extremely important, because you'll be very, very unhappy if you join a board where your values don't match. So preparation. It's a self-work. You can be helped by a mentor. It worked for me. And it's about presenting yourself, having some kind of a branding about who you are and what you stand for, including your values, and have that ready. Because when the call comes, and when the call came to me, you don't have time to do this, because that's an introspective process. You don't have time to be ready. So you have to be ready. So that works for me really, really well. I'm talking about network. So I said network is not my thing, and it would never be. But however, I was well known for some of the things I did, and I was known for what I stood for. So actually 4 out of the 5 boards I have been in my life, 4 out of 5, was because I knew somebody, or I was known of because of what I used to do. So you don't have to be networking as much as you have to be known in your industry and where you are for things you're doing well. So that's kind of, I think, I would like to mention. There is another piece of it, and I think it was mentioned earlier through the introduction. The time commitment that a board requires those days has to be taken into account when you make your decision. There is one thing about which is very comfortable, is to get on one board, like I did, before you finish your executive roles. So you have one board, and you have to think, is this possible? Do I have the time to do this? Do I have the right to do this? And this is incredibly different in different companies. So think about this. That should be part of your criteria. Can you give the full amount of time in there? And that's what I had to think about when I joined my boards, is do I have time to do this? So I think, Melody, that's what I wanted to say. Be prepared is my line, basically.
Thank you, Catherine. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Melody. So first of all, thanks so much for the invitation. I love being able to share what I've learned in the short period of time. As Melody mentioned, I'm new to boards. I retired in June of this year. Chevron doesn't allow executives to serve on public boards while they're still working. And so I just kind of hit the ground running in June when I retired, and was fortunate to land on a board shortly after that. But my story actually began about a year before that. And I'm going to call the theme of what I talk about a lot today is just do it, because what you'll find if you just lean into things that don't necessarily look like they're going to lead to something, then they may lead to something. And in my case, I was invited to speak at a Juneteenth event in Houston. Actually, it was online. It was the middle of COVID at the time, in June of 2020. And I was invited by a company I'd actually never even heard of. Just a quick commercial about PROS Holdings. It's a AI machine learning and algorithm developing organization that pioneered dynamic pricing in the airline industry about 35 years ago, and currently serves about 60% of airlines globally, and is now in 30 plus other industries as well. But they're a back office organization. I hadn't heard of them. But I still said yes, because I had interest and passion in the topic, and was something I thought I could add value to. And so I called in, and it was interesting because one of the first things I saw on the screen was the CEO and his brother, who actually happened to be an executive as well. It's a public company, sitting on the couch in one of their living rooms, dialing into the call. And it just had a very comfortable culture to it, a very inclusive family feel to it. And it was immediately drawn to the culture. Catherine talked about having values that match. I think it's important that it's a culture that matches as well. And so I provided the keynote speech, and afterwards the CEO reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, really enjoyed the conversation. Let's connect." And so we did, and we trade emails now and then, and trade ideas and articles and things that we had seen. And so I decided a few months in, I also serve on the board of a nonprofit board of Search Homeless Services here in Houston. And we're having a big fundraising event. And so I sent an email to practically everyone I knew, looking for money, as you do when you're on a nonprofit board. And of course, he responded and looped the CEO of Pros in as well. They both responded. The COO, his name is Les, came into town November of that year, same year. We played golf, and at the end of it, I said, "Hey, look, I'm retiring in June of next year, and I'm interested in board service. Would you mind socializing my CV with your network?" And he said, "Sure." Then he paused for a minute. And he said, "We have an opening coming up as well." And in fact, what I determined later is that he actually didn't send my CV around until he had me locked up on their board, which was fine. But anyway, he shared my CV with the CEO, who shared it with the chairman, and I began going through the process, and then joined the board in June of this year. And so it's, for me, and I think Catherine makes a good point about networking. Not all of us are comfortable doing that. But the bare minimum you have to do is make sure people know that you're there and they know that you have interest in this space. Don't assume that people do. And so networking for me is really just, again, asking folks to socialize your CV. You're not asking for a job. You're just asking them to activate their network and share that CV. And you never know where opportunities are going to come from. Additional things I did were reach out to friends I knew served on boards. And it's interesting, there were some I thought I would get a more engaged reaction from, and I didn't. And there were some that I thought, well, they're not going to do much with this, and they did. And so I've subsequently had introductions to CEOs of organizations, and I'm on the list, I'm on the radar, and I expect those to develop into things down the road. So yeah, you don't have to, networking isn't a bunch of glad handing and socializing and having drinks and all those things. It's really just making sure people know who you are. As Catherine talked about, making sure you're ready. So making sure your CV is ready, and be ready to have that conversation. Let folks know what you're interested in, and that will create opportunities for you. So that's my story, Melody.
Great, Lee. Thank you. Suzanne, share your story.
Sure, Melody, Catherine, Lee, it's great to be with you today, and it's great to have everyone here listening and preparing for what could be a very fruitful board career in the future. My story was very much like Lee's, frankly. When I retired from McKinsey after a very long career there, I also didn't have the ability to serve on a board while I was a partner at McKinsey, because it's not allowed for conflict reasons, which is much the case in many organizations. But a year before I retired, I was very deliberate in starting a series of conversations. I knew I wanted to do board service as my second career. And so I activated my network. I went and talked to all the CEOs that I knew and told them my intentions. I talked to people who I knew sat on public company boards and let them know of my intentions. I talked to executive recruiters. I talked to people in professional associations. I attended some conferences for board members. I affiliated with NACD, the National Association of Corporate Directors, and just used that as a process for getting the word out that I wanted to do this. And interestingly, it was someone that I knew who happened to sit on the NCANA board who said, "You know what? I think you'd be a great fit. We're looking for someone who understands the North American natural gas industry and has broad strategic thinking. And I think you'd be a great fit for our board." And it's through that introduction that brought me to my first board seat, and kind of the rest is history.
Thank you so much. Suzanne mentioned the role of executive search, and executive search was really an important part of my process getting on my first boards. They had reached out to me during my career, and my one advice is to create a relationship with executive search before you retire. They're really important relationship for you. I felt disloyal and connecting with them before I retired, but afterwards it was really good to have the relationship. It was important to me. And then Lee also mentioned the nonprofit. So just as a follow-up to you all, how important is executive search in your process? And people ask all the time, does a nonprofit board prepare you or position you for future public board service? So Lee, your thoughts on those two?
Sure, Melody. I heard a stat somewhere, and I can't tell you where I heard it, but that 70% of board seats are acquired through networking and 30% are acquired through search firms. And so you might think you want to not spend a whole lot of time with search firms and really focus on the networking. And the reason that makes in part some sense is because there aren't that many search firms out there that do this. But as Melody said, they play a very, very important role for a number of reasons. They have so much access, and some organizations will only use search firms, particularly now as they're looking to create more diversity on their firms. If they don't have their own network that gives them access to those diverse communities, then they have to go through a search firm to have access to diverse candidates. The other thing is that they know the business really, really well. They've got their own networks they can step into, and they know what you need to do to prepare. They'll help with CV preparation and make sure you're prepared to step into those roles. So definitely reach out to all the search firms and let them know, again, as we talked about earlier, let them know what your intentions are and what you want to do going forward. In terms of nonprofit boards, if you join a nonprofit board with the intent of getting access to a corporate board or a private equity board, you're going to be disappointed, right? That's not the reason you should join a nonprofit board. Having said that, it's another avenue for networking. You should join a nonprofit board because you've got a passion for the work that they do. You want to contribute to society in some way that this nonprofit board will allow you to do. But what you'll find on those nonprofit boards are executives, some working, some have already retired, potentially some folks that work on corporate boards or private equity boards, and again, broaden your network. So nonprofit boards can play a role in it, but again, join them for the right reason, and then the added uplift from that will be access and broadening your networks.
Thank you, Lee. Anything you want to add, Suzanne or Catherine?
Boy, Lee, you stole the words right out of my mouth. That was really well said. In terms of executive recruiters, they're important but not sufficient. So they all keep databases of people who are qualified and interested in board seats. So you need to be in their databases, and it's really important. There are 5 big main global recruiting firms, and then there are a lot of specialty firms creeping up now that specialize in trying to seek candidates like women and people of color. So it's important to reach out to them and just get to know them. But remember, they're representing their clients, not the candidates. And so their responsibility is to their clients. And so you can't rely on them for placing you, but you do want to know them because they are important resources. And then on not-for-profit boards, Lee, you're spot on. First, you join a nonprofit board because you have a passion for their mission and you're willing to contribute your time and your personal treasures to that mission. Now they can help your network because a lot of senior executives will sit on those boards, and so you'll get to know them and you'll learn a little bit about governance, which is important. But non-for-profit boards have completely different missions than public company boards, and you have to understand that a public company board has reporting responsibilities and a far broader set of responsibilities than a not-for-profit board. And so you won't learn the skills you need for a public company board via a not-for-profit board.
Thank you.
I would like to just add something because Lee and Suzanne said most of the thing I wanted to say, but on the executive search, I think what those companies are bringing to you as an individual is the ability to join boards that are not really directly accessible to you because they are international, they are not in your realm of knowledge of first, do they have an opening, and who is on the board? You know somebody. So it allows you to really diversify your portfolio. And I think Melody probably has this experience with not just the sector, but also the place, the geography. So if you are interested by a different geography or a different sector, they are critical to place you there. And I have to admit, I'm very impressed. I've not always used the lead they gave me in terms of the ability to be on board, but I have used some, and that gave me that additional ability to do things.
Great point, Catherine. I serve on a pharmaceutical board, and that opportunity would not have come to me as an oil and gas executive, except for executive search. So thank you for highlighting that. Let's shift to skills. So that, you know, with the substantial focus over the past few years on accelerating diversity on boards by investor groups such as BlackRock and State Street and others, there's been notable increases in women that we've talked about and racially diverse board members, despite the fact that in our population of women and racially diverse executives, there's fewer CEOs. So what are the skill sets and experiences that are being sought more actively to drive greater diversity in the boardroom? Suzanne, let's start with you on that.
Sure. I think the way I think about it is there is limited real estate in a boardroom, right? You might have 9 to 11 seats, and in that you need to create the right complement of skills. You can't afford to have a single subject matter expert in the boardroom. You need to have, everyone has to be able to contribute across all aspects of the board conversation. So my advice to people as they're honing their careers is to think about, how can I build a breadth of skills? And the most important thing is obviously general management, P&L experience. You've got to know what it is like to have responsibility for running something and for being responsible for delivering results. And that's really critical. You have to understand capital allocation. You have to understand strategy. You have to understand stakeholder management, talent development, building culture. Those are all really important. And then on top of that, you know, now we're talking about ESG, we're talking about cyber, we're talking about digital marketing, and sustainability, and, you know, finance. And so I'd say general skills, really important, and then be deep in a couple of other things so that you can contribute in that regard.
Great. Catherine, your thoughts on skill sets you're seeing?
Well, I think as Suzanne said most of the thing I was thinking of saying. I think when you address CEO and CFO, we still need, by the way, some of those in the board. But when you address this, is by default, it's a way to do it that's lazy, because they have already what you want above all in the board, which is judgment, right? So we are just being lazy when we say, we want a CEO or a CFO. The reality is, as Susan said, what we need is actually to have people that have an overall view of business and what is important to running of a company, and have them that background that create that famous judgment that we need that comes to the board. And you don't have to be a CEO or CFO or COO to have that, but you need to have that breadth behind you. And I think that's absolutely critical. And I'm just paraphrasing what you're saying, Susan. I do think that all those new super trend that we are seeing in the world around the social forces that are coming behind, around the climate issues, around the technology, about the crisis that are multiple, immediate right now because of the social, because of different things, but before social media and media. This is bringing new opening that are different from the traditional pools. And I think as we think about not just the general overview of how you are not a single pointed person in a specific part of the business, it's like a generality that we need help with on board, frankly. We have never seen this whole thing coming up at the same time as us. And not many of us have dealt with this like that, with that speed. And I think the more diverse people we get in, the more people that understand this we get in the board, the more it's going to help us in the future. So I would agree that this is a big issues that we need to I wanted to add, because I can't not add it. We have in Shell, we have managed parity. We have 50% women. And this is just happened this year, and it's a tremendous change. And to tell you about the difference of what we're looking for, the latest of our member, who is a woman, she has actually from the armed force, and she's was in the IT field operating side. So she was in Iraq and all those places. She understands crisis, believe me, she does. She understands IT security, she was in the IT side. And she understands integration issues within a group of people. She makes a huge difference in the communication, in the way the board conversation goes about. The impact is tremendous. So looking a bit outside of our normal view, even the normal view about strategy and all this matters. So that was my point, Melody.
Great, thank you. I'm going to follow up a little bit on skills, and I'm going to start with Lee on this one, and then see what Suzanne thinks. But because I know Lee, you had a very global career with in commercial and operations around the globe, and then you went into a staff leadership role at the corporate in Chevron before you retired. And so many women diverse leaders contemplate a final role in their career before they retire and move into what I call phase 2, which is board service. And what final assignments in a career would you either pursue or avoid to position you? And Leo, let's start with you, and then Suzanne, would you add?
Yeah, that's a great question, Melody, because I think conventional thinking says, stay on the P&L path, pick up as much of that as you can, because that's what boards are looking for. Boards have a lot of that already. Someone, I think Susie mentioned earlier that, boards were off limits to those of us in underrepresented groups. And they were made up heavily of CEOs and CEOs, which means you don't have a lot of the broadening skills and behaviors that are necessary on boards today. And so we're looking for things like cybersecurity skills, supply chain, ESG, and you don't always pick those up by running a business. And so, moving into a staff role later on, quite frankly, I probably would not have had access or even thought I was in position to be on a public board if I didn't move into the staff role. It got me one step away from the C-suite in a Fortune, I don't know what Chevron is now, at least Fortune 15, maybe 20 company, which is very senior, and gave me access to executives, to C-suite folks, to boards in ways that I would not have had before. As you mentioned, Melody, my background is business development and commercial. And what's interesting, though, in talking with pros at the end of the day, and a lot of my thinking was, I'm probably here because of, we're leaning into this ESG space now, and my most recent assignment as CDIO is of interest to them. I was talking to the chairman about a month ago, and he said, no, we're interested in your international business and commercial expertise. That's what we didn't have, and that's what we wanted more of. And so, what you should look for in your next role is an opportunity to broaden what it is you already have. What are those skill sets that you can add to this? I'm going to recommend a book to you. It's called How Boards Work by Dambisa Moyo, Dr. Moyo. Many of you may have read that or heard about that already. It just came out this year. And it's interesting in there. She talks about the challenges she had being recruited for boards when she first started because she didn't have the P&L experience. But she ended up writing a book, a bestseller, international bestseller on international economics, and was recognized as an SME and an expert in that space. And now she is highly sought after a board member. She's on the Chevron board and several others because of expertise in that area, and has not had the P&L experience that we think most people are looking for. So find that niche skill, that niche experience that others don't have, and highlight that. And that will make you more attractive to boards that are out there.
Suzanne, any thoughts you want to add?
Sure. The way I think about this is no different than the way we think about CEO succession and broadening someone to be ready for a CEO role. And oftentimes you think about, well, what kinds of experiences should this person have beyond running a big business unit? And you oftentimes want to rotate someone through investor relations so they understand how to speak with shareholders. You think about rotating them through strategy so that they understand how to think about the big picture and long-term positioning of the company. And so as you think about your own role development and what might prepare you either for the CEO role or frankly the board role, it's no different. And so I think you think about those kinds of skills that will position you to be able to think about the big picture and develop the judgment that Catherine so appropriately said is critical to being able to add value in the boardroom.
Great. So we're still going to focus a little bit on skills and positioning yourself to be on your first board service. So we talked a bit about networking. Catherine shared her views on networking, but we also talked about visibility in your industry and how important it is to be known. And what advice would you give women or diverse leaders to really enhance their visibility in the industry that they work in? Catherine, let's start with you. I know you shared your views on networking, but let's also talk about the visibility in the industry.
Yeah. As I mentioned, Melody, I think there is two ways to actually bring your visibility up. One is through your meeting your own board member and the own people that, as Lee mentioned, is very critical in my mind to increase your visibility, because those board members are board members in other company, and they allow you to kind of show who you are, what you're made of, and that helps for your future. And the other one is this visibility around your specific what is your profession, what you are strong at. I think you really need to use this. If you consider you are going to be, and that's, I know it's a next question, but thinking about how you think about the next 15 years. So how do you actually be part of the solution when it comes to your particular issues that are around your industry or your sector, right? There are some group issues that are handled that are not considered so incredible that the company have to fight each other. So they have to get together to actually find a solution. This is where you need to be. This is where you need to go to find solution for a group cross industry kind of solution. So association around your business are very important. Association about what you do, and also if you can be in any kind of grouping. I'm going to insist on this because I'm around climate, for example. Let's take the climate issues that we are facing. Get involved, understand what the issues are, be curious about it. This is a whole group that you could access without having to actually change what you do or your business or change your career. So those to me is what you are interested in and what you're good at. So those two things, those two poles, get involved in the association around that.
Oh, great advice. There's so much emerging knowledge base around ESG and climate emissions, and learning as much as you can and being really astute on those issues. Those are important in the boardroom today, and watching what issues are important: cybersecurity, technology, ESG, very, very important. And start learning that before you're tapped to be a board member, and that will help increase your knowledge and visibility. Anything to add before we leave skill sets? Okay. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, I just want to just build a bit. I think we're tight on time here a bit, but I want to build on what Catherine said. I love the thinking about what you're interested in and what you're good at. If you lean into those things and do those on a regular basis, you'll be known for that. You'll be asked to speak, to be on panels. That will increase your visibility. You can podcasts, all those kinds of things. And hey, then you're doing things that you love while you're doing that, while you're increasing your visibility. So lean heavily. We don't do enough of what we want to do and what we love. We do what we think someone else wants us to do. If you do those things, you'll be happier and you'll increase transparency. It's a win-win.
Yeah, great advice. Well, let's shift. We talked about how to get on board access. We talked about skill sets. Let's talk about how boards think and what is the conversation inside the boardroom. And let's, we want to talk about how boards think that and pursue the benefit of diversity, both in the boardroom and across the company. So boards are having conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion at the boardroom, and how are they thinking? Many of our studies are concluding that corporations with women on boards are more profitable. We also know that less than 10% of directors are either women or men of color. So can you share insights on the diversity of your boards and what is the benefit that you're seeing as a result of having more diversity on your board? What robust conversations are happening, and how do you see that playing out in some of your experiences? So Suzanne, let's start with you on this one.
Sure. There's been a lot of research on this topic, and I think there's great debate as to whether there's causation or correlation in terms of diversity in the boardroom. But I don't think, I truly believe that it's a chicken or egg. Great companies will seek out diverse thought, right? And so there's no doubt that you're going to have certainly correlation in that regard. I think diversity of thought is what's critical in a boardroom, because what you're trying to do is bring in different perspectives who will ask provocative questions and have a dialogue and a debate about important issues. And to do that, what you don't want is groupthink. And so you need to have different perspectives. And so it's diversity of background as well. And so, women might think a little bit differently. People of color might think a little bit differently. I have one of my boards that I'm so proud of. It's, Owens Corning, which is a Fortune 500 manufacturing company in the building product space. We have 3 women, 2 men of color, and a Hispanic man. So more than half of our board is not white male. And I'll tell you, the conversations that we have in that board environment in this, sleepy Toledo, Ohio town is remarkable. And I just feel like it makes a huge difference in our conversation. And all of these people are uniquely qualified, very, very senior people who have huge perspectives to add.
Fantastic. Catherine, very similar question around, nom-gov committees often look at the portfolio of experiences. And just because, women are not necessarily diverse, but women with different expertise are very diverse. And so you have to look at the mix of skill sets in general. But just also share your thoughts, Catherine, if you would, on, what benefit do diverse boards and executives bring to the company to address the challenges that we see ahead in our industry around ESG and climate and other things? How do we tackle that with more diversity?
This is a very important question. And I think I have been on the board where I was the only woman, and I'm on the board where it is 50% women. The conversation is completely different. But what we have to remember is if you're going to bring women on the board, you have to listen. And not just women, diversity, you have to listen. Because if it's just to have a woman or a diversity in the board and you don't listen to them, then there's no point having it. So it has to become a renewed dynamic in the board. Like the board itself has to have a renewed dynamic around the way they handle themselves, the communication, when you have more diversity in the board. And Suzanne, I think your point about groupthink, it was one of my biggest points I was going to say. So obviously we don't have diversity of thought between us, which is sad. But we actually have the same point that is so important around this. I want to say one thing, is I think we haven't addressed this, but when you think about the importance of talents in the future, the great resignation, all the people that want to do things differently, one of the things that women, and I'm sure men of color or women of color are looking is, what does a board look like? What does the executive look like? Do I really want to join a company where the top of the company is all white men, or is all of a specific, the board is all white men also? I think if we want to attract the best talent to be successful in companies, the board has has to show the example. The executives have to show the example of what it means to have diversity with you. So that's kind of the big pictures to me that matter so much. Is it's much more fun and much more dynamic to be in a board which has 50% diversity than one. It's very lonely to be one in a board and quite annoying. But, you know, I know what my choice is now, so.
Great points, Catherine. Thank you. Lee, any thoughts to share again on what the benefit of diversity in the boardroom, how it shapes the conversation?
Yeah, just briefly, because I think you both covered it really, really well. And I have to continue to apologize. Still no diversity of thought, because I think we're all very much aligned on this. The other thing I want to say is congratulations on your boards being very diverse. And I think we need to talk about that, because we don't see enough. We talk about the progress we need to make, which is very, very true. But we also need to just take a moment and celebrate where we do have diverse boards. I'll talk about pros for just a minute as well. We've got a very diverse board. It's 9 people. 3 are women. We've got 2 men of color. One of the women is Lebanese American, and our CEO is Venezuelan American. So quite a diverse board. I'm very proud to be on. And you know, you talked about cognitive diversity, which is the goal. I think of visible diversity as the canary in the coal mine. If you don't have visible diversity, it's kind of hard to make the argument that once you get inside the doors, you've got that cognitive diversity that you're looking for. And so this is something that's measurable. And if you see this, then you do have a sense you've got the kind of diversity that you need. So that's it. I think you, the two of you, covered most of it very well. Thanks.
Well, I'm going to get to just a quick final wrap-up question for all of us. And I just want to say that, you know, from my own personal experience, being on a board is a very important responsibility, and it's very important to devote the time and energy you need to be a really good board member. Suzanne mentioned the important role of organizations like National Association of Corporate Directors. There's a Women Corporate Directors. I always have to put a plug in for them because they're very powerful and strong here in Houston as well. Great way to learn to be a strong board member. But also it should be a fun engagement. You should be learning and really enjoying the board service that you are serving on. And, you know, we talk about diversity of people in the boardroom. I think it's also beneficial as you put together a board portfolio is to consider diversity in your board service. I serve on 2 energy boards, but also a pharmaceutical board. And I've just joined a startup energy transition company board, which will be very different for me than my public board service. So what I want to ask our 3 panelists here is, what do you enjoy most about board service or the portfolio? And what advice would you give women as to why they should consider and strive for this? So Lee first, then Suzanne, then Catherine.
Okay, so for me, you know, I just retired, and I realized I can't play golf every day. I need to keep the hamster running. And what I love most about being on a board is the learning opportunity, particularly being in the IT space. You know, I grew up in the oil and gas business, and so I'm really getting to learn. In fact, I took a course on coding just so I could be a bit more fluent and understand the things that they're talking about. But deeper than that, I really have to dig in and understand how we go to market, so I can contribute in that space in a way that's meaningful. So I love it. I guess what I end with is just what I started with, is just say yes to opportunities, broaden your perspectives, broaden your thinking and your experiences, and enjoy your board service, because it's just continuing learning as you continue to grow and get older. Continue to learn, and being on a board is a great way to do that.
Great, Lee. Suzanne, what do you?
Yeah, I agree on the first point. For all of you who have a lifelong love of learning, I think board service is just a continuation of that. I describe myself as being intellectually promiscuous. And so I think board service allows you to do that, to continue to learn, to continue to ask questions, to continue to explore. I think the other thing that's important to me is I think the obligation of leaders is to create more leaders. And from the boardroom, you can coach and develop and create more leadership capacity. And that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart and is really important.
Thank you. Catherine.
Well, there is very little I can add to what makes me go and be happy with curiosity and furthering what was in my past things that interested me. I think for the women and the persons of colors and any people that are currently working, being able to continue to participate in the future of society is something to me that makes a huge difference. And being able to see and touch and feel and think about the challenge that societies is bringing for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, and being an impact on how this will end up, to me is absolutely critical to my personality and to the fact that I want to make a difference. And it's a very different way to do it than being an executive, but it allows you to do it where you are interested, where you know your passion is. And I think that comes back to what we have said and what Melody says also about doing different things. Your passion matters. And if you have not been able, as Lee said, to always do it when you were in executive, you can do it afterwards. And that is great. So to me, that's what makes me happy.
Well, thank you so much. I want to just say where I come back to where I started as well. And just to say, for those of you that have joined this panel to listen in with these outstanding, incredible stories from these leaders, is that you're taking such a wonderful first step to learn more about board service. And these opportunities didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago to call in and learn. And the fact that you are doing that is so commendable. So I really want to say, this is a great first step or continuing step for you. And I started out saying that we had an outstanding panel that would deliver, and man, did they deliver. So I want to say thank you to Suzanne and Catherine and Lee for an extraordinary job. They are all going to be in coaching rooms as well as myself. And we look forward to engaging with you all in the breakout. So I'm going to bring Sarah and Susie back in and say over to you guys.
Hello again, and please join me in a round of applause for that amazing VIP panel. Melody, Catherine, Suzanne, and Lee, thank you for your incredible insight and perspective on leading the way to diverse and gender-balanced boards. And the best is yet to come. But before we move into our live director coach breakout sessions for an hour of interactive networking, Susie and I would like to pause and take a few moments to recognize and thank our sponsors and supporters.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. By the way, social media is blowing up. This absolutely was the most amazing panel. So thank you to all of our panelists. And thank you to our global sponsors, without whom we wouldn't be here. And now also, I'd like to thank in particular, our local sponsors. And these include the Platinum Houston sponsors, which is Bank of America, Cheniere Energy, and Marathon Oil. Our gold sponsors, Alliance Bernstein, Latham & Watkins, White & Case, Bristow, JP Morgan Chase & Company, Kirkland & Ellis, and Gibson Dunn. And our silver sponsors, King & Spalding, Motiva, Gevo, W&T Offshore, TC Energy, Bracewell, Bank of Texas, Golden Seeds, USI, and our community partner, the Women's Energy Network of Houston. We couldn't have done this without you.
Furthermore, we would like to thank our esteemed 2021 Leadership Committee, all of whom serve as invaluable resources to our local community. Thank you for your support this year. In addition, we would like to specifically recognize those that have personally donated in support of our cause in 2021. That includes Mary Sapone, Laura Fulton, Jeanette Mark, Elizabeth DeStefan, Robin Fielder, Rebecca Lee, Evelyn McLean Quick, Sharon Beamer, Catherine DeLacy, Soha Hack, Han Longlene, Victoria Lazar, and Marielle Polio. And last but not least, please join me in recognizing our amazing 50/50 Women on Board National Team and Chapter, our local Houston committee, and of course, our 40 director coaches, without whom today would not be possible.
I couldn't agree more with you, Sarah. We are incredibly grateful for the continued support of so many amazing women and men. Now, Let's move to the breakout session where your director coach is waiting for you. They're all pinging me, and they're in the rooms and they want you to go over there. And you can access your assigned room by clicking on the breakout link in the agenda tab on Event Mobi. Thank you for investing in yourselves. Thank you for supporting us and for supporting board diversity and gender balance.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Please enjoy the holiday. We'll see you in your breakout rooms and again next year. Bye.